Standing at my cousin Sarah's wedding reception, I watched my older brother Jake approach with that familiar smirk plastered across his face. 5 years had passed since I'd seen any of them. 5 years since I'd walked away from the constant criticism, the disappointment in their eyes, the way they treated me like the family failure. Jake raised his wine glass, looked me up and down, and delivered his signature, condescending laugh. "So, Ben, you still cleaning toilets for a living?" The question hung in the air like poison while our relatives turned to watch the show. I just smiled, reached into my pocket, and pulled out my Tesla key fob. "Nah, Jake. I mostly travel now. My company pays me even when I sleep." The look of absolute shock on his face was worth every sleepless night of the past 5 years. Let me take you back to where this all started. 5 years ago, I was 24 years old and living what felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Every night at 11 p.m., I'd put on my janitor uniform and head to the corporate office building downtown. While the rest of the world slept, I emptied trash cans, mopped floors, and cleaned toilets in a building full of successful people who would never even notice me. The worst part wasn't the job itself. The worst part was coming home at 6 in the morning to my childhood bedroom where my father David would already be drinking his coffee and shaking his head in disappointment. 24 years old, and this is what you've made of yourself, he'd say, without even looking up from his newspaper. Your brother Jake was already promoted to senior accountant by your age. My mother Linda would hover nearby, never directly criticizing, but never defending me either. She'd make these little comments like, "Well, at least you have a job," which somehow felt worse than my father's outright disapproval. The message was clear: I was the family disappointment, and everyone just had to tolerate my existence. But Jake, my older brother, by 3 years, he took family disappointment to an art form. Every Sunday dinner became a performance where he'd talk about his latest promotion, his new car, his engagement to someone from a good family. Then he'd turn to me with fake concern and say things like, "Don't worry, Ben, not everyone can be successful. Someone has to do the cleaning right." The relatives would laugh uncomfortably, and I'd sit there taking it because I didn't have any comeback that would matter. The breaking point came during Thanksgiving dinner when I was 24. Jake stood up to make an announcement about his upcoming wedding, and the whole family applauded like he'd just cured cancer. Then he looked directly at me and said, "Ben, you might want to clean up your act before the wedding. I mean that literally." Uncle Robert actually snorted with laughter, and Aunt Patricia covered her mouth like she was trying not to giggle. I tried to explain that I was working on some business ideas, that the janitor job was just temporary while I figured things out. My father cut me off mid-sentence. "Business ideas? Ben, you dropped out of college to chase fantasies, face reality. Some people are meant for bigger things, and some people are meant to clean up after them." That night I lay in my childhood bed, staring at glow-in-the-dark stars I'd put on the ceiling when I was 8 years old. I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to prove them all wrong, but I was going to do it without their help, their support, or their presence in my life. What I didn't know then was just how far Jake had gone to keep me down. 3 weeks after that Thanksgiving dinner, I got called into my supervisor's office at the cleaning company. Mr. Peterson, a decent guy who'd always treated me fairly, looked uncomfortable as he sat me down. "Ben, I got a strange call yesterday," he said, fidgeting with his pen. "Someone claiming to be your brother called to check on your work performance. Said he was looking out for you, wanted to make sure you were showing up on time and doing good work." My stomach dropped. "What did you tell him?" "I told him you were one of our most reliable employees." "But Ben, it struck me as odd. Why would your brother be calling your employer? And why did he seem disappointed when I gave you a good review?" That's when I realized the depth of Jake's sabotage. He wasn't just humiliating me at family dinners. He was actively working to keep me trapped in a life that made him feel superior. I thought about all the job applications I'd submitted over the past year, all the interviews that seemed to go well until they suddenly went cold. All the times potential employers had given me strange looks when I mentioned my name, like they'd heard something about me already. Jake had been calling ahead, poisoning the well, making sure I stayed exactly where he wanted me beneath him. That night I started planning my escape. Not just from the job, not just from the house, but from the entire family system that had convinced me I was worth less than nothing. I had $800 in savings, a beat-up Honda Civic, and absolutely nothing left to lose. Austin, Texas became my refuge and my trial by fire. I chose it because it was 800 miles from home and had a reputation for embracing people who wanted to reinvent themselves. What I didn't anticipate was how brutal those first months would be. My studio apartment was a converted garage behind a house in East Austin. 400 square feet for $600 a month, with a broken air conditioner and neighbors who played music until 3 in the morning. The bathroom was so small I had to step into the shower to close the door. But it was mine, and for the first time in my life, nobody was telling me I didn't deserve it. I worked 3 jobs to survive. Dishwasher at a downtown restaurant from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., grocery stock clerk from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., and food delivery driver on weekends. I was getting maybe 4 hours of sleep per day, living on energy drinks and whatever food I could afford after paying rent and keeping gas in my car. The isolation was the hardest part. I'd left behind everyone I knew, but I quickly discovered that Jake's sabotage had reached further than I'd realized. When I tried to reconnect with college friends through social media, I found that most of them had blocked me or wouldn't respond to messages. The few who did respond were cold and distant, like they'd been warned about me. 6 months into my Austin adventure, I learned why. I was scrolling through Facebook late one night when I noticed a comment thread on a mutual friend's post. Jake had written something about family members who disappear because they can't handle responsibility, and people who move away and then try to borrow money from old friends. That's when I started digging deeper. I created a fake profile and began investigating what Jake had been saying about me. What I found made me physically sick. Jake had created an entire narrative about my disappearance. According to his version, I'd left town owing people money. He'd posted screenshots of text conversations that looked like me asking for loans, but the phone numbers were wrong and the writing style was nothing like mine. He'd told people I'd had a mental breakdown and was living on the streets, asking anyone who would listen to avoid giving me money because I'd just spend it on drugs. The most devastating discovery came when I found a fake profile he'd created using my name and a distorted photo of me. This fake Ben was posting desperate pleas for money, rambling about conspiracy theories, and making inappropriate comments on people's family photos. Anyone who searched for my name would find this fake profile, first complete with mutual friends who thought it was really me. Jake had systematically destroyed my reputation among everyone I'd ever known. He'd made sure that even if I succeeded in Austin, I could never come home because nobody would believe I'd changed. The lowest point came 8 months after moving to Austin. I'd been working my 3 jobs while trying to learn web design through free online courses, surviving on maybe 3 hours of sleep per night. My body finally gave out. I collapsed while making a delivery, woke up in the emergency room with severe dehydration and exhaustion. The nurse asked for my emergency contact, and I realized I literally had nobody to call. No family member would take my call even if I tried, and I had no friends who would care if I lived or died. I was completely alone in the world, and it was entirely my brother's fault. But lying in that hospital bed, something shifted in my mind. Jake had taken everything from me: family, friends, reputation, support system. But he'd also given me something precious, even if he didn't realize it. He'd given me complete freedom. I had nothing left to lose, and no one left to disappoint. For the first time in my life, I could focus entirely on my own success without worrying about what anyone else thought. Jake had burned every bridge behind me, which meant I had no choice but to move forward. When I got out of the hospital 2 days later, I made myself a promise. I was going to build a life so successful, so undeniably impressive, that even Jake's lies couldn't diminish it. And when the time was right, I was going to make sure he saw exactly what his sabotage had created. Recovery from my hospital stay came with an unexpected gift. My roommate in the cardiac wing was a guy named Marcus Williams, a freelance web developer who'd come in for stress-related chest pains. Marcus was about 35, covered in tattoos, and had the kind of calm confidence I'd never seen before. "You look like someone who's been running from something," he said on our second day sharing the room. "Running towards something, actually," I replied. "I just haven't figured out what yet." Marcus laughed. "Brother, I've been where you are. Sleeping 3 hours a night, working jobs that don't lead anywhere, thinking that suffering equals progress. Let me ask you something. What did you want to be before life beat you down?" The question caught me off guard. Nobody had asked me what I wanted in years. "I used to think about marketing," I said slowly. "Like understanding why people buy things, how to tell stories that make people care about products. But I dropped out of business school, so that's not really an option anymore." Says who? Marcus pulled out his laptop and showed me his bank account. He'd made $42,000 in the past 3 months building websites and managing online marketing campaigns for small businesses. "I never went to college. Learned everything online. The internet doesn't care about your degree, man. It cares about results." Over the next 2 days, Marcus introduced me to a world I didn't know existed. Remote work, digital nomads, people making six-figure incomes while traveling the world. He showed me platforms where businesses posted marketing projects, explained how to build a portfolio without formal experience, and gave me a roadmap for transitioning from my current situation to something completely different. The key, he said, is understanding pain points. Every business owner has problems they can't solve. If you can solve their problems better than anyone else, they don't care where you went to school or what your brother says about you online. When I got out of the hospital, I made a radical decision. I quit 2 of my 3 jobs, keeping only the weekend delivery driving because it gave me flexibility. I moved into an even smaller apartment for $400 a month and dedicated every spare moment to learning digital marketing. I started with free courses on YouTube and slowly worked my way up to paid programs. I learned about search engine optimization, social media advertising, email marketing, and content creation. But more importantly, I learned about consumer psychology, the art of understanding what motivates people to take action. My first breakthrough came 3 months after leaving the hospital. I was delivering food to a small restaurant called Carmen's Kitchen when I overheard the owner, Carmen Rodriguez, on the phone with someone about her struggling business. "I don't understand it," she was saying. "The food is good, the reviews are positive, but we're barely breaking even. Nobody knows we exist." After I delivered her order, I worked up the courage to approach her. "Excuse me, ma'am. I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. I'm learning digital marketing, and I wondered if you'd let me look at your online presence. No charge, just for practice." Carmen was skeptical, but desperate enough to let me take a look. What I found was a common problem: great product, zero marketing strategy. Her website looked like it was built in 1995. Her social media posts were sporadic and boring, and she had no system for capturing customer information or encouraging repeat visits. I spent the next week creating a complete marketing plan for Carmen's Kitchen. New website design, social media strategy, email list, building local SEO optimization, and a customer loyalty program. I presented it to Carmen as a portfolio piece, asking only that she let me test a few strategies to see if they worked. The results were immediate and dramatic. Within 2 weeks, foot traffic increased by 30%. Her social media followers tripled. Local food bloggers started featuring the restaurant after I reached out to them with compelling story angles. By the end of the month, Carmen's revenue had increased by 40%. Carmen was so impressed that she insisted on paying me and referring me to other small business owners. "You understand something most marketers don't," she told me. "You know what it feels like to be underestimated. You fight for businesses like mine because you know what it's like to be counted out. But the real breakthrough came when Carmen asked about my background, and I told her the abbreviated version of my story. She listened quietly, then said something that changed my perspective entirely. Your brother did you a favor, you know. He forced you to develop skills you never would have learned if you'd stayed comfortable. The empathy you have for struggling businesses, the hunger to prove yourself, the ability to work harder than anyone else because you have to, not because you want to. That's not something you can teach. That night, I made a decision that would define the next phase of my life. I was going to build a digital marketing agency that specialized in helping underestimated small businesses become impossible to ignore. I was going to use everything Jake had put me through to become the person I was meant to be. What I didn't know was that someone from my old life had been watching my transformation from the very beginning. Late that night, I got a message from an unknown Instagram account. I've been following your work with Carmen's Kitchen. I know who you are, and I'm proud of what you're building. Don't stop. The family doesn't know I'm watching, but I wanted you to know that someone sees what you're really doing. The message was signed with just a letter S. Sarah. My cousin Sarah had somehow found my business content and recognized my work. She'd been secretly following my progress while keeping my existence hidden from the rest of the family, including Jake. For the first time in over a year, I wasn't completely alone anymore. Sarah's secret support became the foundation for everything that followed. Through encrypted messages and carefully hidden social media interactions, she became my connection to a world I thought I'd lost forever. More importantly, she became the first person in my family to see my work for what it really was, proof that I'd never been the failure they thought I was. I always knew Jake was wrong about you. She messaged me 6 months after first making contact. Even when we were kids, you saw things differently. You understood people in ways the rest of us didn't. I just didn't know how to defend you back then. Sarah's photography business was struggling, and she asked if I'd help her develop a marketing strategy. Working with her was different from my other clients because she understood my background and motivations. She became my testing ground for more advanced strategies, and together we built something remarkable. Within 8 months, Sarah's photography bookings increased by 300%. She went from doing occasional portrait sessions to being booked solid for weddings and corporate events across 3 states. The transformation was so dramatic that other photographers started asking her for advice, which led to me getting referrals I could never have earned on my own. By my second year in Austin, my client list had grown to 15 businesses across 4 states. I was making more money per month than Jake had ever made as an accountant, but I was careful to keep a low profile. The last thing I wanted was for my success to get back to my family before I was ready to reveal it on my own terms. My business model was simple but effective. I specialized in transforming businesses that had been written off by other marketers. The struggling restaurant with outdated systems, the family-owned retail store competing with big chains, the local service provider trying to break into digital marketing for the first time. I understood their pain because I'd lived it myself. The transformation wasn't just financial. For the first time in my life, I was developing real confidence based on genuine achievement. I started working out regularly, not because I wanted to look different, but because success had given me energy I needed to burn off. I invested in a professional wardrobe not to impress anyone, but because I was meeting with business owners who needed to trust my expertise. The travel component of my work became addictive. I'd spend 2 months in Miami helping a chain of Cuban restaurants optimize their delivery systems, then fly to Denver to work with an outdoor gear company on their e-commerce strategy, then drive to Seattle to help a coffee roaster expand into wholesale markets. Each city taught me something new about business, about people, about myself. Through Sarah, I learned that my absence had created ripples in the family that nobody talked about openly. My parents' marriage was struggling under financial pressure from my father's failing accounting practice. Jake's engagement had ended after his fiancée grew tired of his need to control every aspect of their relationship. Uncle Robert's construction business was losing money, and Aunt Patricia's real estate career had stalled. They all act like everything is fine, Sarah told me, but I can see the cracks. Jake especially seems angry all the time now. He asks about you sometimes, but in a weird way, like he's trying to figure out if you're planning to come back and cause problems. What kind of problems? I asked. I think he's scared you'll tell people what really happened, why you left what he did to keep you away. He's built this image of himself as the successful, responsible brother, but it only works if you stay gone. That's when Sarah revealed the most shocking information of all. She'd been keeping careful records of Jake's social media activity, including screenshots of the fake profiles he'd created and the lies he'd been spreading. She'd also discovered that he'd been embezzling money from our father's business to maintain his lifestyle after his engagement ended. He's taking money from the client trust account, she explained. Small amounts, but consistently. I only know because I do bookkeeping for Uncle Robert, and he mentioned some irregularities when he was comparing notes with your father about business expenses. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm getting married next year and I want you at my wedding. But more than that, I want you back in the family, not as the person who left, but as the person you've become. I think it's time for everyone to see who you really are. The decision to attend Sarah's wedding wasn't easy. I'd built a good life in exile, free from family drama and expectations. But Sarah was right about one thing: my father was getting older, and there were things that needed to be resolved before it was too late. I began planning my return carefully. I arranged for my biggest client, a Fortune 500 company CEO named Gregory Harrison, to call me during the reception to discuss a potential multi-million-dollar contract. I prepared documentation of my business success, client testimonials, revenue reports, photos from my travels, proof of the life I'd built without anyone's help. Most importantly, I made peace with the fact that returning to my family meant confronting Jake directly. He'd spent 5 years believing his sabotage had destroyed me permanently. He was about to learn just how wrong he'd been. The week before Sarah's wedding, she sent me one final message. Jake has been bragging to everyone about how he handled the Ben situation years ago. He thinks you disappeared because you couldn't handle being compared to him. He has no idea what's coming. Neither did I, honestly. But I knew that showing up to Sarah's wedding would either heal my family relationships or end them forever. After 5 years of exile, I was finally ready to find out which one it would be. Sarah's official wedding invitation arrived at my Austin apartment on a Tuesday morning in March, delivered by certified mail with a handwritten note tucked inside, "This is your formal invitation to come home. Everyone will be there, including Jake. I can't promise it will be easy, but I can promise you won't be facing it alone anymore." The weight of that piece of paper felt enormous. For 2 years, Sarah and I had maintained our secret communication, building trust and sharing information about family dynamics I'd missed during my exile. But an invitation to return for her wedding made everything real in a way that text messages never could. I almost said no. My life in Austin had become everything I dreamed of during those dark early days. My digital marketing agency was generating consistent 6-figure revenue. I was traveling to new cities every month, and I'd built genuine confidence based on actual achievement rather than family approval. Did I really need to risk all of that peace by walking back into the situation I'd worked so hard to escape? But Sarah's next message changed my perspective completely. "Ben, I need to tell you something about Dad. He's been diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's disease. Some days he's completely normal, but other days he doesn't remember conversations we had the day before. The doctors say it's progressing slowly, but we don't know how much time we have before he stops recognizing people entirely." The news hit me like a physical blow. David Parker, the man who'd criticized my every decision and compared me unfavorably to my brother for decades, was losing his memory. Whatever chance I had to resolve our relationship was disappearing with every passing month. "There's more," Sarah continued. "Mom has been hiding debt problems. Dad's business has been losing money for 3 years, but he's too proud to admit it and too confused to fix it. Mom took out a second mortgage to keep the practice afloat, but she's behind on payments. She's been working part-time at a department store to make ends meet, but she's too embarrassed to tell anyone. The family that had seemed so successful and stable when I left was falling apart in my absence. And Jake, the golden child who tormented me for being a failure, was making everything worse. Jake doesn't know about Dad's diagnosis, Sarah explained. Mom asked me not to tell him because she's afraid he'll try to take control of the business and push Dad out entirely. But Ben, I think Jake's been stealing from the practice. I've seen the books and there are withdrawals that don't match any legitimate business expenses. The full scope of the family crisis became clear over several conversations. My father was losing his mental capacity while trying to hide it from everyone. My mother was drowning in debt while maintaining the appearance of middle-class stability. Jake was embezzling money while positioning himself as the family success story. And Uncle Robert, Aunt Patricia, and the rest of our extended family had no idea how deep the problems ran. I can't fix this alone, Sarah admitted. I'm 26 years old with my own business to run and a wedding to plan. But you could help them, Ben. Your marketing skills could save Dad's practice. Your business connections could provide solutions nobody else can see. You understand turnaround strategies because you've lived through your own transformation. The irony wasn't lost on me. The family member they'd written off as a failure had developed exactly the expertise they needed to solve their problems. But help would come at a price. I'd have to face Jake's reaction when he realized his sabotage had backfired spectacularly. What does Jake know about my current situation? I asked. Nothing real. He's convinced you're living in poverty somewhere, too ashamed to contact the family. He told Uncle Robert last Christmas that you were probably homeless and addicted to drugs. He seemed almost happy about it. And if I show up at your wedding successful and confident, he'll either have to admit he was wrong about you or double down on his lies and risk exposing himself as the person who's really been causing family problems. Sarah's final argument was the most compelling. Tom and I have been planning this wedding for 18 months. I want my cousin there, the one who used to defend me when other kids picked on me at family gatherings. Not the person Jake convinced everyone you were, but the person I know you really are. I made my decision that night. I would attend Sarah's wedding, but I would do it strategically. Jake expected me to slink back into the family as the same defeated person who'd left 5 years earlier. Instead, he was going to meet someone he wouldn't recognize, a successful entrepreneur with nothing to prove and nothing to hide. My preparation became a military-style operation. I arranged for Gregory Harrison, the Fortune 500 CEO I'd been working with, to call me during the reception with a legitimate business proposal we'd been discussing. I selected my wardrobe carefully, expensive but not flashy, confident but not arrogant. I prepared responses to every possible insult or question Jake might throw at me. Most importantly, I prepared myself emotionally for the possibility that this reunion could go terribly wrong. If Jake chose to escalate the confrontation, if my parents couldn't accept my success, if the family dynamics were too damaged to repair, I was ready to walk away again, this time permanently. But I owed it to Sarah, to my father's fading memory, and to myself to try one more time. The scared 24-year-old who'd fled Austin with $800 didn't exist anymore. In his place was someone Jake had never met and wouldn't know how to handle his little brother, all grown up and completely unafraid. The week before the wedding, I bought my plane ticket and made my hotel reservation. For the first time in 5 years, I was going home. Not as a failure seeking forgiveness, but as a success story that nobody saw coming. Jake was about to get the shock of his life. The church looked exactly the same as it had during my childhood: white stone exterior, stained glass windows, depicting scenes I'd memorized during countless boring Sunday services, and a parking lot full of cars belonging to relatives I hadn't seen in 5 years. I sat in my rented BMW sedan for 10 minutes, watching family members arrive and trying to calm my nerves. Uncle Robert was the first person to spot me. He'd aged considerably, his hair completely gray now, and his face showing the stress Sarah had mentioned about his struggling construction business. When he saw me walking toward the church entrance, his expression shifted from confusion to recognition to something approaching shock. "Ben, Jesus Christ, is that really you?" He grabbed me in a bear hug that felt genuine but tentative. "You look different. Good different. Really good." Before I could respond, Aunt Patricia appeared at his side, her mouth literally hanging open. "Oh my God, Ben, we didn't know. Jake said you were..." She trailed off, clearly struggling to reconcile my appearance with whatever Jake had told her about my current situation. "I've been doing well," I said simply. "Missed you both." The wedding ceremony itself was beautiful. Sarah looked radiant in her grandmother's vintage dress, and Tom seemed like exactly the kind of decent guy she deserved. I sat in the back row, partially hidden behind Uncle Robert's broad shoulders, watching my family from a distance I'd maintained for 5 years. My parents looked older and more fragile than I'd expected. My father's confusion was visible, even from across the church. He kept looking around like he wasn't sure where he was or why he was there. My mother held his arm constantly, guiding him through responses and keeping him focused on the ceremony. The financial stress Sarah had described showed in the tension around her eyes and the way she clutched her purse like she was afraid someone might steal it. Jake sat in the front row with the rest of the family, but even from behind I could see his agitation. He kept checking his phone and looking around the church like he was expecting something bad to happen. Sarah had mentioned that several relatives had been asking about me lately, wondering if I'd been invited to the wedding. Jake had apparently assured everyone that I wouldn't show up because I was too ashamed of my situation. The reception was held at a country club where our family had celebrated every major event since I was a child. The same beige carpet, the same crystal chandeliers, the same circular tables with white tablecloths and generic centerpieces. I'd spent countless hours in this room feeling like an outsider among my own relatives. Tonight would be different. I waited until dinner was served before making my entrance. I wanted everyone relaxed and comfortable, their guard down, their attention focused on celebrating Sarah rather than analyzing my presence. The strategy worked perfectly. My entrance created a ripple effect of recognition and whispered conversations as I moved through the room. Relatives who hadn't seen me in 5 years did double takes trying to reconcile the confident, well-dressed man walking toward the family table with their memories of the defeated janitor who disappeared without explanation. My parents saw me first. My mother's hands flew to her mouth, tears immediately filling her eyes. My father looked confused but pleased, like he recognized me but couldn't quite place the context. "Ben? Is that my Ben?" He asked, his voice uncertain but hopeful. "Hi, Dad," I said, leaning down to hug him. "It's good to see you. You look successful." He said the words coming out with surprising clarity. "Like a businessman. Are you a businessman now?" Before I could answer, Jake appeared at my side. The 5 years had not been kind to him. His hairline had receded significantly. He'd gained at least 30 pounds. And there was something desperate in his eyes that hadn't been there before. But his trademark arrogance remained intact. "Well, well, well. Look what the cat dragged in." He raised his wine glass in a mock toast, his voice loud enough to draw attention from nearby tables. "Ben Parker back from the dead. Tell me, little brother, how's the toilet cleaning business treating you these days?" The conversation around us died instantly. Everyone within earshot turned to watch what would happen next. This was the moment I'd been preparing for, the confrontation that would either vindicate 5 years of exile or prove that some family dynamics never change. I smiled calmly and reached into my pocket, pulling out my Tesla Model S key fob. The distinctive design was immediately recognizable to anyone who'd ever been near a luxury car lot. "Actually, Jake, I don't do much cleaning anymore. I mostly travel these days. My company pays me even when I'm sleeping." Even when Jake's expression shifted from smug confidence to confused irritation. "Your company? What company? Come on, Ben. We all know what really happened. You ran away because you couldn't handle being compared to someone successful. Successful. I let the word hang in the air for a moment. Tell me, Jake, how much did you make last year? That's none of your business. I made $423,000 before taxes. My digital marketing agency has clients in 12 states, and I just signed a contract with a Fortune 500 company that will triple that income next year. I spoke quietly, letting the numbers speak for themselves rather than trying to sound boastful. Uncle Robert leaned forward, his eyes wide. Marketing agency, Ben, are you serious? Before Jake could respond, my phone rang. The timing was perfect, exactly as Gregory Harrison and I had planned. I glanced at the screen and smiled apologetically. I'm sorry I need to take this. It's about a business deal we've been working on for months. I answered the phone on speaker knowing that everyone at the table would hear both sides of the conversation. Gregory's voice was crisp and professional. Ben, I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. I know you're at a family event. No problem at all, Greg. What's the update on the Morrison account? The board approved your proposal. We're moving forward with the 18-month contract. $2.4 million with the bonus structure we discussed. Can you be in Chicago on Monday to sign the paperwork? The silence at the table was deafening. Jake's wine glass was frozen halfway to his mouth, his eyes locked on my phone like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Absolutely, I replied. I'll have my assistant book the flight tonight. Excellent. Oh, and Ben. The board was particularly impressed with your work on the Reynolds campaign. They're already talking about extending our partnership beyond the initial contract. I appreciate that, Greg. I'll see you Monday. I hung up and slipped the phone back into my pocket. The family stared at me like I'd just performed a magic trick they couldn't understand. Jake was the first to break the silence, but his voice had lost all its earlier confidence. That was fake. You set that up to impress everyone. I pulled out my business portfolio and set it on the table, client testimonials, revenue reports, photos of me presenting to corporate boardrooms and speaking at marketing conferences. The evidence was overwhelming and impossible to fake. This is who I've been for the past 3 years, I said simply. While you've been telling everyone I was homeless and addicted to drugs, I've been building something you told me I'd never be capable of. Aunt Patricia leaned over to examine the portfolio, her real estate experience giving her the knowledge to recognize legitimate business documentation. Oh my God, she whispered. Ben, this is incredible. You really did it. Did what? My father asked, his confusion cutting through the tension. My mother answered him, her voice shaking with emotion. David, our Ben, became successful. He became the businessman you always wanted him to be. That's when Jake made his fatal mistake. Instead of admitting he'd been wrong, instead of apologizing for 5 years of sabotage and lies, he doubled down on his cruelty. Successful. Jake's voice was getting louder, more desperate. He ran away like a coward, and now he shows up with some fake documents trying to convince everyone he's something he's not. I know who Ben really is. I know what he's capable of. Nothing. He's capable of absolutely nothing. The words hung in the air like poison, and I realized that this moment would define not just my relationship with Jake, but my place in this family forever. Everyone was watching, waiting to see how I'd respond to the same kind of attack that had driven me away 5 years earlier. But I wasn't the same person anymore. I had nothing to prove and nothing to fear. You're right about one thing, Jake, I said quietly. You do know who I really am. I'm the brother who left this family to protect myself from your sabotage. I'm the person who built a successful business while you were stealing money from Dad's practice to pay for a lifestyle you can't afford. I'm the family member who came back tonight not because I needed your approval, but because Sarah asked me to, and because I wanted to help solve problems you've been making worse for years. The accusation about embezzling money hit Jake like a physical blow. His face went white, then red, then white again. You can't prove that. Sarah can. She's been keeping records of the discrepancies in Dad's business accounts. But that's not why I'm here tonight. I'm here because this family is falling apart, and I have the resources to help fix it. The question is whether you're going to keep fighting me or whether you're finally ready to grow up. Jake stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This is bullshit. I don't have to listen to this. He started to walk away, then turned back with one final desperate attack. You want to know the truth? I made sure you couldn't get jobs after you left. I called employers, I warned people about you, I made sure everyone knew you were unstable. And I'm glad I did it because you deserved it. The confession hung in the air like a bomb exploding in slow motion. Everyone at the table now understood not just that Jake had been lying about my situation, but that he'd actively worked to destroy my life out of pure spite. Uncle Robert stood up, his face dark with anger. You did what? Jake? My mother whispered, her voice broken. How could you do that to your own brother? But I wasn't angry anymore. Looking at Jake in that moment, sweating and desperate and caught in his own lies, I felt something I hadn't expected: pity. He'd spent 5 years believing his sabotage had broken me. But all he'd really done was force me to become someone he could never compete with. It's okay, I said, my voice calm. Jake, you did me the biggest favor of my life. You forced me to leave this family, which meant I had to learn to succeed without anyone's help. You made me stronger than I ever would have been if you just left me alone. The fight went out of him all at once. His shoulders sagged, and for the first time in our lives, Jake looked like the younger brother. I didn't want you to come back and make me look bad. Jake, I said gently, you didn't need my help for that. The hours that followed Jake's public confession transformed Sarah's wedding reception into something nobody had expected: a family intervention disguised as a celebration. One by one, relatives who'd believed Jake's lies for 5 years came to my table to apologize and ask about my real story. Uncle Robert was the first. Ben, I owe you an apology that's 5 years overdue. I believed things about you that I should have questioned. I let my nephew lie to my face about his own brother, and I'm ashamed of myself. You didn't know, I replied. Jake was convincing because he mixed truth with lies. I did leave town abruptly. I was working as a janitor when I left, and I didn't tell anyone where I was going. He just left out the part about why. Aunt Patricia joined us, tears streaming down her face. I feel sick about this. At Christmas dinners, at family gatherings, we talk about you like you were some kind of cautionary tale. Jake would say things like, at least Ben's situation reminds us to be grateful for what we have. I thought we were being sympathetic. You were being manipulated, I said simply. Jake needed everyone to believe I was a failure so his success would seem more impressive by comparison. But the most important conversation happened when my parents approached my table together. My father's Alzheimer's was more advanced than I'd realized. He kept looking around the room like he wasn't sure where he was or what was happening. But when he focused on me, there were moments of perfect clarity. Ben, he said, his voice stronger than I'd heard all evening. I remember now. You're the one who left. You're my son who went away. Yes, Dad, I'm back now. Did you become successful? Your mother says you became successful. I looked at my mother, who was crying silently. I did okay, Dad. I built a business helping other people succeed. Good, he said firmly. I always knew you were smart. Smarter than me, maybe. I wasn't always nice to you. It's okay, Dad. No, it's not okay. A father should build up his sons, not tear them down. I tore you down because I was afraid you were better than me. That's not okay. My mother took my hand across the table. Ben, there are things I need to tell you about our situation. Financial things, business problems. I've been too proud to ask for help, but after tonight, Sarah told me about some of it. The second mortgage, Dad's practice, losing money, the debt problems. I'd like to help if you'll let me. We can't ask you to fix our mistakes. You're not asking. I'm offering. My marketing expertise could probably turn Dad's practice around within 6 months. I have clients who need the kind of accounting services he provides. It would be a business partnership, not charity. Over the next 2 hours, we worked out a plan that could save my parents' finances and my father's legacy. I would take over marketing and business development for the accounting practice, using my digital expertise to attract new clients and streamline operations. My mother would handle day-to-day administration, while my father remained the figurehead and handled clients during his good days. Jake would step back from any financial access and focus on finding his own career path. "What about Jake?" my mother asked. "He's been stealing from us, but he's still our son." I looked across the room where Jake sat alone at the bar, nursing what appeared to be his fifth or sixth drink. He made his choices, but I'm not going to destroy him the way he tried to destroy me. He can confess to the embezzlement, pay back what he took, and will keep it in the family. But he doesn't get access to business accounts anymore, and he needs to find his own way to make a living. Sarah appeared at our table radiant in her wedding dress, but clearly emotional about everything that had happened. "Ben, I'm sorry your homecoming became so dramatic on my wedding day." "Are you kidding? This is the best wedding gift you could have given me. You forced a conversation that needed to happen 5 years ago. So you're really staying, you're coming back to the family." I thought about the question seriously. I'm coming back, but not as the person who left. I'm not the family failure anymore. And I'm not going to pretend to be smaller than I am to make other people comfortable. If the family can accept me as I am now, then yes, I'm staying. Tom, Sarah's new husband, had been quietly observing everything from nearby. He approached our table with a thoughtful expression. "Ben, I hope this isn't presumptuous, but I work in commercial real estate development. Some of the marketing challenges you've described sound familiar. Would you be interested in exploring some business opportunities outside your family's situation?" The conversation led to connections that would eventually triple my business revenue, but more importantly, it proved that my family's acceptance didn't require me to limit my ambitions or hide my success. As the evening wound down, Jake finally approached my table. He was drunk, emotional, and clearly struggling with everything that had been revealed. "Ben, I need to say something." "I'm listening." "I've been jealous of you since we were kids. Not because you were successful back then, but because everyone liked you better. Mom and Dad had to pretend to be disappointed in you, but I could tell they secretly thought you were more interesting than me. More creative, more willing to take risks. I was just the safe choice." "Jake, let me finish. When you started struggling after dropping out of college, part of me was relieved. Finally, I was the successful one. I was the son they could be proud of. And when you left town, I made sure you stayed gone because I was terrified you'd come back and prove that you were always better than me. I was never competing with you, Jake. I know that now. You were just trying to find your own path, and I made it as hard as possible because I needed you to fail so I could feel successful." He paused, wiping his eyes. "I stole $17,000 from Dad's business over the past 2 years. I'll pay it back every penny, even if it takes me 5 years. How will you pay it back without a job? I don't know, but I'll figure it out. Maybe for the first time in my life, I'll actually earn something instead of stealing it or undermining someone else to get it." Looking at my brother in that moment, broken and drunk and finally honest, I made a decision that surprised even me. "Jake, I'm going to make you an offer. I need someone to handle client communications and project coordination for my business. It's entry-level work, but it pays decent money, and you could learn the industry. The job is yours if you want it, but you'd be working for me, not with me. And if you ever lie to a client or try to undermine my work, you're fired immediately. You'd really give me a job after everything I did? I'd give you a chance to earn a job. But Jake, this is the last chance you get. If you mess this up, we're done forever." He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I won't mess it up, I promise." The wedding reception ended with our family more honest with each other, than we'd been in decades. My father's illness meant we didn't have unlimited time to rebuild relationships, but we had enough time to try. My mother's financial stress would be resolved within months through the business partnership we'd planned. Sarah had her cousin back in the family, and she'd proven that sometimes the person everyone writes off is exactly the person they need most. As I drove back to my hotel that night in the BMW I'd rented to make an impression, I thought about the lesson I'd learned over the past 5 years. Sometimes the people who hurt you most give you the greatest gift, even though they don't mean to. Jake's sabotage had forced me to develop strength skills and confidence I never would have found if he'd just left me alone. I'd learned that success isn't about proving other people wrong. It's about proving yourself right. I'd learned that family approval is wonderful when you can get it, but self-respect is essential whether you get it or not. Most importantly, I'd learned that the person who believes in you most needs to be yourself, because external validation can disappear at any moment, but internal confidence lasts forever. The scared, defeated 24-year-old who'd left this town with $800 and a broken heart was gone forever. In his place was someone who'd discovered that rock bottom can be the foundation for building something extraordinary as long as you're willing to do the work and refuse to give up on yourself. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Thank you for coming home. I knew you'd become something amazing, but even I didn't know how amazing. Dad's going to be so proud when he understands everything you've accomplished." I texted back, "Thank you for never giving up on me. See you soon." Then I called my assistant to book a flight to Chicago for Monday morning. Gregory Harrison and I had a $2.4 million contract to sign, and my real life was waiting for me. The next morning, I drove my Tesla out of town toward the airport, heading back to Austin to pack up my apartment and prepare for the next phase of my journey. But for the first time in 5 years, leaving didn't feel like running away. It felt like moving forward, and I was taking my family with me. Have you ever had to prove people wrong about who you really were? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you turned your lowest moments into your greatest comebacks. If this story inspired you to believe in your own potential, please give it a like and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family challenges and building success against the odds. And don't forget to share this with anyone who needs to be reminded that sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming everything they said you couldn't be. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your greatest comeback is always one decision away from becoming your reality.